to love, the love inside your heart. Victory to the light that shines in your mind.
Namaste. Hi, welcome to the Shaman The Mermaid's Astrology Forecast. And we're bringing you the report for December 7th, which is the Gemini Full Moon, all the way through January 6th, the Cancer Full Moon, as my wife Trine said, from thinking to feeling over the course of a month. And we looked at this report, and our first reaction was, but then we kind of, went deeper into it and went through the threads and the waves and the warp and the woof and came down to our mantra.
It's not either or, it's yes and more. And we chose that because there's a lot of roller coaster from December 7th to January 6th. And there'll be ups and downs and ups and downs. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we hit the aspects. But it's like we're looking at like, oh, that's going to be hard. But that could the next day be kind of good to help that hard. Then it's going to be hard again. And then there's some smooth road after that. And it just keeps going like, the rolly hills or a roller coaster ride. And I've been thinking a lot about ships and how they're navigating with just the stars and their remedial tools of maybe a compass, but mostly guided by stars and in pitch black at night. And then suddenly big waves come and all hands on deck. And it's kind of like that right now. It's kind of like the all hands on deck and be prepared for anything can come. There's a lot of Uranus energy in this report. And I think that lightning strike that can be thrown down from Uncle Uranus is a big player in what's coming up, making it feel a little unstable. So we have to learn how to balance and steady ourselves. If there was another word or another theme we could say is steady yourself, find that really planted land and then hold it while the ship goes like this. And that's what's going to be coming up for a little bit. And really this month to me kind of feels a little bit of what's coming for the next year and a half. A lot of ebbing and flowing through the life that will seem like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get through this? And then a big piece of that is it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't mean pick this side or choose this or choose that. Finding that steady stance with 1 foot here and 1 foot here, kind of straddling wide, is a yes and that's what we're really pushing for, is that you kind of find the balance between the extremes when they come rocking your boat in this next month and really the next 2 years into 2025. But that is a whole other report that we just did and is available for you. You can check it out to get the 2023 year in a glance and see what we talked about just yesterday. And I say we talked about it, he talked about it.
We talked about it.
Chimed in a couple bits. Anyway, that's on the website. We'll go back to this month's report. So it kicks off, as Michael said, with that Gemini full moon, which is a really mental moon. There's a lot of, Gemini is the thinking sign. It's very heady, sometimes too heady, sometimes can't make a decision because there's too much to think about and they get distracted easily, but it's also very curious, very provoking and bringing about a lot of inquisition, which is healthy. It's healthy to poke around and see what's really out there, but that can just be a lot. And then that takes us all the way, that full moon, and then we end up in the Cancer full moon, which is how you feel and what's in your heart, and your emotions are all right here. So we're going to go from here to here in 30 days, and that's about 10 inches. So that's also part of that, big roller coaster ride. And it kicks off with the moon and Mercury in conjunction, moon and Mars in conjunction to each other. And that was the very first aspect I saw that Michael had written out for us. I was like, ugh, right there. That's like the moon is your internal feelings and Mars right next to it. Mars is your warrior. To me, this felt a little bit like potential for beating yourself up, or that inner critic coming in really strong and chomping on your head right after that Gemini full moon, and making you feel kind of berated from your own self, not from somebody else on the outside world, but from your own thoughts and feelings. So be mindful to be gentle with yourself around this new moon time and right after. And then we come into some Venus energy. What do you got on her?
We got Venus cruising along, and she's going to go right into Capricorn on December 9th. She's been in Sagittarius for the past couple weeks, and she'll also be squaring Jupiter that same day. Jupiter is in its last degrees of Pisces, and Venus will be squaring Jupiter in her last degrees of Sagittarius. So it's something crucial, critical that's coming to the forefront that needs to be looked at. And then it's going into Capricorn. Capricorn is then, what are you going to do about this? What structures are we going to put in place? And Venus can have anything to do from things around finance to real estate to self-love, but particularly if she's leaving Sagittarius, it's more around philosophical beliefs, visions, and things that you hold to the heart as your truth about the universe. And so there might be something arising up because Jupiter is in the sign of Pisces, which is spiritual law and taking a journey. And so you might realize something about perhaps yourself or inverse in the universe that is maybe a little shocking to you.
So that's a little bit what we're saying, like looking at like, oh gosh, it starts out with this Mars and the moon right next to each other, and the inner critic might start beating yourself up. And then the next thing was Venus squaring with Jupiter, and it's like, oh, and then your values and your self-love is just going to take a big hit from this big guru self, where you're going to really think we're not doing enough. And or the theme, and it could be both. It could be, there might be a little bit of that inner critic kicking in, but that square with Venus and Jupiter coming at a 90-degree angle to each other, that might allow for some real honest vulnerability and some shadow work to come into play, and really taking a look at our own values, as Michael said. So you'll see this theme repeated for the 30 days or the 27 days of this month of, oh goodness, this could be tough. And then the thing following it looks like that's also a tough aspect, but really it's kind of balancing itself if you work with it, and you have to be prepared for it, because otherwise it could just be, diving down the hill at full speed on that snow sled and crash and burn at the bottom of the hill. And we don't we want it to be a fun ride or a roller coaster ride, not the wreck. So we'll keep pointing out these juxtapositions between that, what feels like either or, but it can be yes and more. So then coming up right after the whole Venus and Jupiter square and Venus moving into Capricorn, then we have Sun squaring Neptune. And these are two big energies. What do you feel about these guys?
Personal self coming into a square with spiritual self.
Which is kind of a repeated theme of the Venus squaring Jupiter. They feel very similar on that way. But I feel a difference between Sun and Venus and squaring these different planets, Jupiter and Neptune. Sun is how we show up in the outside world. So this could look, how we get defensive and we get a little bit brazen, or even outwardly arrogant, or express our emotions when we don't mean to. To me, that looks like a potential for that on that Sun square Neptune. And then right after that, we have another big square of Mercury square Chiron on December 15th.
What do you think about that?
He asked me. Well, I'm scared of this one, to be quite honest, because it's your communicator, Mercury, and your wounded healer squaring. And we've just come off of some of these potential defensiveness setups, and we're being set up to, if we're not managing it correctly, we'll get super defensive and really critical of others, because that's a defense mechanism. When we're feeling critical on ourselves, we'll turn it around and push it out and blame and shame the other people for blaming and shaming us, when really we're the ones blaming and shaming ourselves. but we don't want to beat up ourselves too much, so we get that defensive shield up. I see that as a big piece of Mercury Chiron. But what's the yes and to Mercury squaring Chiron?
Well, I'll pair it with the next aspect, which is on December 17th, Mercury will trine Uranus. So first it squares Chiron and then trines Uranus. And if we're going to yes and, Mercury square Chiron is like going deep and looking at some of our wounds, but Chiron's also the healer, so it's the yes and, so he's not just the wound. And so this is an opportunity to go in deep and maybe heal a deep wound. And while it could be challenging, it doesn't have to be conflictual. Like you could be going in deep with somebody else in a conversation, going into a tender area. Okay. And they're both in earth signs, so it's like take it slow, move slow, don't push, don't rush. It's tender. This is a challenging topic, but we can get through it. And then when Mercury trines Chiron, Chiron has that possibility for instantaneous radical shift right away. Poof. You know, it's going to cook for 2 days, but it's more of a field than an instant. And you may find there's a shift. And it could be a subtle shift, and subtle doesn't mean that it's not powerful. A subtle shift in the way that you see the world will dramatically change, you know, your attitude and how you operate and how you interact with people. But it could be a simple thing is, oh, I don't think everybody's a jerk in the world. And then you start, you know, interacting more positively and harmoniously.
And maybe you even realize that you're not such a jerk yourself, and to not be so hard on yourself as well, and intermingle with your own self in a positive way. And then, okay, so we get through that, you know, roller coaster, and then here's another of one of the, you know, potential pieces that can make us feel like we're out of control, and that's Venus squaring Chiron. So just, you know, a few days earlier on the 15th, Mercury was squaring Chiron, so our communication around our wound, and now our values around our wound are squaring, or our self-identity and our wounds are squaring. And again, like we could just really go critical analysis of ourselves. And again, the upshot to it, the yes and instead of the either or, could be then like, yeah, when you're feeling these feels, this is an opportunity for some shadow work to go in and say, okay, what is it that keeps popping up that is not healed inside me, or that is still resentful or still angry or still fearful or still insecure? And let's bring it up and out. And with my own self-love Venus squaring with this wound, let the healer of that wound come forth. And even though squares typically mean disharmony or challenge to it, it could get a little sticky, it could get a little uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean that it has to be conflictual. As Michael said about Mercury squaring Chiron, it can just be an opportunity for that deeper work. But here we are right at the onset of holiday season, and we're going to be dredging out our emotional stuff and spreading it all out, and maybe having a dialogue with somebody else on the outside that's part of this mess that we have internally, or maybe it's just all with ourselves. And so you have to keep that 2 feet on the, you know, ship's deck, balancing these waves, and not let yourself get catapulted overboard, because it's potential for that. We could just feel like, oh, what the heck, and even dive overboard, let alone let the waves throw us overboard. We don't want to do that. We want to learn how to manage this, because again, this is training wheels this next month for what's to come, where we're going to be easily distracted with outside information, with wars, with conflict, with, you know, dissolving of banking structures and dissolving of political forms, and we're going to feel like, what the heck is going on? And we have to learn how to balance when the waves are rough. And this is, again, practice. So don't throw yourself overboard. Don't throw everything else with the baby in the bathwater out too. And just take a few deep breaths, work with it, and don't let it wreck everything around you. Don't let it ruin the holiday parties and the get-togethers with friends and the dinner parties and the whatnot. So few deep breaths. Just know that everything's in a flow. You got this. This is all coming up, but steady wins the race. On that, slow and steady wins the race.
Same as Mercury, Venus will also trine Chiron 3 days later on December 22nd. So there's that same energy of resolution of something that seems unresolvable.
Venus trining Uranus.
Yes, sorry, Venus trining Uranus.
So there's like potential for something really great. So if you jumped overboard, you might miss that the other ship comes in with all the goods that you needed and helps you out. So stay afloat, stay on board, manage that whole situation. In between those two, though, we skipped over Sun moving into the sign of Capricorn. So happy birthday to all the Capricorns on winter solstice, December 21st. That's a earthy time of year, and it's kind of what I celebrate holiday time around. The two of us, we look at it more as that celebration of Yule and coming into the winter time, and encourage you to do a little celebration as well. I mean, separate from your holy days that you might honor, this is another one that Yule, winter solstice time, is a reflection time. Like the bears are going into their dens and the squirrels are crawling into their nests, and all the little varmints, as my mom would call them, are all burrowing into their little holes, and they're hunkering down for winter, and they're just staying in that kind of little cocoon state. And then here us two-leggeds are running around to all the stores buying our Christmas lights and our presents and our wrapping paper, and we're going crazy, and we're honking the horn, and we're getting the eggnog, and we're not being like bear at all. And so to me, this Yuletide celebration on December 21st, 22nd, right in there, is an opportunity for us to just slow down, take a break, don't go outside, light your candle, sit in some meditation, have a moment to just really listen to yourself. Take that deep listen like Bear's doing right now, or any of your other little animal friends you can think of. And then we did mention Venus trining, harmonious with Uranus, so some ship could come in and bring us some boon on December 22nd, and then Chiron's going to go direct on December 23rd. What does that mean? And that's also the Capricorn New Moon.
Chiron's been retrograde for 4 months, so going direct. It's all around the Aries energy, which is the masculine energy. And I really like how our teacher Kaipacha, he laid out this thing of what the positive masculine looks like. And the first descriptor he uses is open-hearted, which to me is a very resonant thing, but it's not usually the first thing one would list as a masculine trait, but why not? Mm-hmm. Open-hearted, being generous, being kind, being welcoming, being a good leader, being potent. These are all aspects of positive Aries. So Chiron going direct is an opportunity for you to stand in your positive masculine power or positive yin power. And it's on the Capricorn New Moon, that first moon of the solstice season. And as Katrina said, a good time for ceremony.
Mm-hmm. Capricorn, remember, is goat and fish. It's like, it has the fish tail, and then it has the goat head and the hooves that can climb up the mountain. So it goes to the two extremes. It feels like it's a nice symbolism of the yes and instead of the either or, because it embodies both. It is the yes and so that new moon in that earth sign, the final octave of the earth signs is saying, like, really ground down, stabilize, get those 2 feet on the deck and learn how to go with those waves. This is an important time to get steady and grounded. So your new moon ceremony could also bring in not only that introspective, reflective, inward time, but setting tone for stabilizing, grounding down, and preparing for winter as we step into it. And then Mercury's going to go retrograde just before Christmas. Perfect timing. This is
just
probably,
after.
Oh, just after. Sorry, on the 27th, 29th. So right before New Year's, I should say. But this is more of that roller coaster feeling of potential, feels like either or, I'm going to get in trouble or I'm going to be on top of my game. Let it be the yes and with Mercury in retrograde, where we slow down, think about our words and our language, but at the same time we say exactly what we mean because we've slowed down. We've had that chance for that ability to kind of wordsmith and speak clearly what we intend to communicate. There's 4 retrogrades this year.
This one starts in 2022, crosses the gap, goes until January 18th, and then there'll be 3 more later in the 2023 year, which is not unusual at all. That's about normal for the retrogrades. That's what I got on that.
Yeah, not being too overly concerned, but it is in the field, and that just kind of throws a little bit of a kink, I guess. Maybe retrogrades don't have to be a kink, but if we're not looking for it, it can be in communication, technology as well, and transportation. Those all get a little bit extra electric at this time.
I think this Mercury retrograde is supported because on the day it goes retrograde, it's conjoined Venus. They're both in Capricorn, and so Venus energy is sort of kicking off that with Mercury. And Venus is love, and she's in the sign of Capricorn where the sun is also at this time, and it's that solstice. And so I kind of think of it as tuned into that Yuletide solstice energy, like go within. It's not a punishment. It's not a bad thing necessarily. This is the yes and more. You might find great treasure in there. You might get into the rhythms of nature during Mercury retrograde. Also, Mars and Uranus are retrograde at this time. And maybe you pay attention to the rhythms of nature and you write a book and do ceremony and get more into your spiritualized life and get more in tune with what your body's needs.
Perfect. It's good suggestion for that Mercury time. Winter time, just in general, following the call of the season. These are all telling us, do this. This is what you should do at this time. And then Venus, he said, was in Capricorn, and right after that, though, she's going to move into the sign of Aquarius. And Aquarius is electric, and it's revolutionary, and it's evolutionary. And so Venus is our values and our self-love, and to some extent our finances, and she's moving into the electric evolutionary sign. And I don't know, I think that's kind of exciting. So there's part of our roller coaster that's looking pretty darn woohoo! Hands up, everybody, all the way down on that one. And that will be January 2nd.
January 2nd.
And then that takes us up to the Cancer full moon, which is that watery emotional sign, and full luminosity in that. And that will be on January 5th, and that's where we'll pick you up again. And in the meantime, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Kwanzaa, we got winter solstice. I know I'm forgetting something in there. Diwali.
Happy winter time.
Happy winter time. Ride that roller coaster with joy. Remember, it's not either or, it's yes and more.
Namaste.
Victory to love, the love inside your heart. Victory to the light that shines in your mind. Earth, sky, and stars, 10,000 suns shine within us all. Give praise to the one. Victory to love, the love inside your heart. Victory to the light that shines in your mind. Earth, sky, and stars, 10,000 suns shine within us all.